All right, good afternoon, ladies. All right, good afternoon, ladies. All right, so I'm waiting until the other students join the class just to let you know. Uh, just to let you know is that on Thursday we're not having a Zoom class on Thursday, and therefore you are to go on Google Classroom to complete the assignment. All right. It's some past paper questions on the Haitian Revolution, and it is to give you some level of practice for the exam. It might seem like a lot, but it is really not. It is a lot. So you can continue to practice on the Google Classroom. I think right now we have about 21 students on Google Classroom, and so there are 3 students who have not joined the Google Classroom. 15, so we have 14 students. I'm going to give the other students maybe about 2-3 minutes before we start. All right, ladies, we're going to begin. Just a recap on Thursday, we're not having a Zoom class. So please to join the Google Classroom and complete the assignment. All right, thank you very much. I believe the due date is on Monday. That's when I believe the due date. And the questions on the Google Classrooms are questions that we are actually going through or that we have been going through from last week until today. All right, so for today's class, what we're going to do, we're going to continue the group presentations with the various groups, and we are wrapping up the Haitian Revolution 1791 to 1804. And so last class, the group that presented would have looked, the first group would have looked at some of the why the Haitian Revolution was successful. And one of the first points that they would have made was demography. They stated that Saint-Domingue at the time had more blacks than whites. And in fact, they said that the majority of the blacks who were in Saint-Domingue, the colony of Saint-Domingue at that time, they were African born. And what the benefit of that, why the Haitian Revolution was successful, sorry, the reason why it was successful was because the African born enslaved people, they were exposed to military tactics in Africa. So they are bringing that military tactics to Haiti, and majority of them, in fact, most of the colony of Saint-Domingue were actually made up of African-born slaves. In addition to that, ladies, another reason for the success or the role of diseases, God just, I shouldn't use the word God, but nature just had it. Our nature gave the enslaved people of Saint-Domingue the gift of diseases, or just for disease to just take the indigenous, the soldiers who came to restore slavery. So for example, diseases such as malaria and yellow fever would have killed the French and the British armies. The French army came from France to restore order into Haiti and to restore slavery. And they were not accustomed to the tropical diseases. And so malaria and yellow fever had a take on them. And also Leclerc, who was the brother-in-law of Napoleon, he would have died from yellow fever. And he was sent to Saint-Domingue to restore slavery. Another reason that the group did not look at last week, but I'm adding it to this week, is that to restore the enslaved people had a knowledge of the terrain. They knew the mountains, the valleys, the river. They knew where to hide. And that gave them an edge over the French and the British army, a major edge. Another thing that we never looked at was a division in the society. The Saint-Domingue was a very divided society. You had the whites against the grand blancs against the petit blancs, the grand and the petit blancs against the colored or the mulatto, the mulatto against the blacks. And so the society was very divided. The poor whites actually wanted the same privileges as the rich whites. The colored wanted the privilege as the whites. So the society was very divided. So it gave the Africans the opportunity to rebel. And they also had access to guns. Another thing that we would have looked at in depth last week was the success of the Haitian Revolution was the leadership of Toussaint Louverture. And so he would have trained the enslaved people in military tactics. One of those tactics would have been the guerrilla tactic. Also, he had very trusted and astute leaders, astute meaning skillful leaders. One of the things when you are going for war is that you must have somebody who actually have your back. And two persons who had Toussaint back was Henri Christophe and John Jacques Dessalines. All right, so they had Toussaint back. So he had trusted persons who he could trust and lead in command of different geographic spaces. Also, he would have supplied the enslaved people with over 30,000 guns. And another thing that he would have done was that he would have attacked the French and the British armies during the wet season. My question, why do you believe that he would have used the wet season to attack the French and the British army? Blake. Davia Blake?
Sir, I didn't hear the question.
The question is, why did Toussaint Louverture attack the French and the British armies during the wet season? Anyone want to answer? Why do you think they would have tried to attack during the wet season?
Maybe because they weren't used to like the terrain when it was wet, so it would be difficult for them to like fight back like how they would if it was dry.
That is correct. That is correct because of the terrain. Anything else?
Sir, like, what if they like had dogs that like hunted them down? It would like throw off the scent, I guess, in the rainy season.
Sir, also,
Go ahead.
Sir, and remember it was like in the mountains and stuff, so you know when it rains it gets muddy and it's very hard, but because they lived there originally, they better knew how to handle it more than the French and the British, which would give them an advantage.
That is, yes, you are correct. All of you are correct. Now, the point I want to bring across, during the wet season, what happened after rainfall when it stopped rain at your home?
Place get muddy and nasty.
Muddy and nasty, but what insect affected the most?
Mosquito.
Mosquito and yellow fever and malaria are mosquito-borne diseases. Yellow fever and mosquito are mosquito-borne diseases. Now, so once a mosquito bit you, then you could get malaria or yellow fever. And so as a result of that, they knew that they were not immune, the whites were not immune to these diseases. So guess what? We are going to attack them during that time when the mosquito is out in full force, and that will infect them with the various diseases. So it was a very astute leadership, very skillful leadership. All right. Now, after that, ladies, from last class, we would have looked at the negative effects of the Haitian Revolution. And some of the negative effects that we would have looked at would have been the death. We said that over 1,000 whites would have died, over 10,000 coloreds would have died, over 60,000 blacks would have died. So there's death all around, reduction in the population, conflict between the blacks and the colored. And as a result of the social tensions in the society, there was also the migration of whites and colored to Jamaica, Cuba, Trinidad, and the Leeward Islands. All right. Another negative effect that we would have looked at was that Haiti, there was a lot of political division in Haiti. And one of the major division was that the country was separated into two parts. In 1807, Haiti was split in half. Alexandre Pétion ruled the south, and the south was, he was a colored leader, right? Colored leader, mixed between mulatto, black and white. While Henry Christophe ruled the north, and he was a black leader. And so there was division within Haiti. How is it that how is it that you fought a war together to get rid of the whites, and then after the revolution, not even so every revolution in 1804, 1805, 1806, 3 years after, you divide the country into two. You can't unite. And so, and then to move from one part of the country to the next, you had to have a passport. And so there was a lot of division in the country. Not only that, instability in the country was also fueled by the assassination of its leaders. Dessalines was assassinated. The leader that came after Pétion and Christophe was Boyer. He united Haiti, reunited Haiti in 1820, and he too had to fled to Jamaica to avoid assassination. And even after him, Haiti has a history of killing their presidents or their leaders. So these are some of the negative political effects. The next thing, ladies, is that in negative economic effects, is that in 1820, Boyer agreed to pay France reparation for the loss of their slaves. Can you imagine that the new leaders in Haiti had to pay France money, all the money that they would have lost as a result of the Haitian Revolution? So Haiti had to pay France for the loss of their slaves, and they had to pay for the loss of their property and their wealth. They had to pay for their freedom, financial freedom. Yes, Brianna. Go
I
ahead.
was saying that that price that they had to pay back France, it also affected their economic growth.
Oh yes. Tell me how it would have affected them.
Because first of all, after the revolution, like not many countries wanted to do business with them and trade with them and stuff.
Yes.
And then they divided up the lands into like small plots, so it wasn't really big enough to do the sugar and the coffee and the things that they were doing before. And then the money that they had to pay back, it just like, you know, it left a little bit of money to really put back into the country to build back up the economy.
Very good. Excellent point. Very good. And so they had to pay, you know, that right up until 2015, Haiti was still paying reparation to France.
Sir, after if the French come and invade the people them land, them have to pay them back for it.
They had to pay the Haitians had to pay France, because for France said, listen, I invested a lot of money in Haiti. I built boats, I built plantations, all the enslaved people that is there, I bring them from Africa, bring them to Haiti. You are my people. So if you want your freedom, you have to pay for your freedom. If you want your freedom, you have to pay for my property that you would have destroyed during your fight, your so-called fight for freedom. All the wealth that I would have lost, you have to pay for it. The boat that I take or the ship that I take to go to Jamaica, the Leeward Island, that fare you still have to pay, because you were the one who destroyed my wealth. And so the Haitian people, right up until 2015, were still paying reparation to France. And that's one of the reasons why Haiti is so poor today, because they don't have that level of, they don't have the money that should have been taken to develop Haiti. They are paying it to France. All right, Ashley, Daniel, Ashley, are you up for speaking?
Yes, sir.
All right, Daniel, you think that was fair?
No, it wasn't.
I think it was a very, very evil thing of France that even up until 2015, just the other day, they were.
Exactly, sir. It's very unfair, sir, because it's not their fault why the French came and took over their country, that they had to
But
have a
remember,
revolution.
I know that the French didn't. All right, so the entire place was owned by the Spanish. Some enslaved people were there when the Spanish had it. The French came and took over that place and called it Saint-Domingue. They would have imported enslaved people from Africa there. And so in reality, in Africa, the Africans who are the ones who are fighting, Haiti is really don't belong to them. Haiti really belongs to which group of people?
The Tainos?
The Tainos. Haiti, all of evil Jamaica that we live on today is the Tainos' land. They brought us here. Our land is in Africa. And so what is taking place here, ladies, is that they are taking over. The Africans are saying, all right, you bring us here, you enslave us, but guess what? We want our freedom, and we're going, you destroy the indigenous people, you're not going to do us the same. We want our freedom because you have been treating us badly. We are not slaves, we are free people. And that's how the revolution would have started. And not only that, ladies, while they have to pay reparation, which is an economic problem, as a student mentioned earlier, France and the United States put a block on Haiti, trade block. Nobody could trade with them. So even if Haiti was producing goods, they have nobody to sell the goods to. The sugar, the coffee, the indigo, all of these different goods, they had nobody to sell the goods to. Because US said, no, we're not trading with you because you have become a black country and we have nothing to do with black people. France, the same thing, you need to pay us reparation. And that is why Boyer agreed to pay reparation, because he wanted to trade. And the only way you make money is through, how you make money? Austin.
Trade.
You make money through selling things, through trade. Exactly. Another thing that would have happened, ladies, was that 1,200 coffee estates would have been destroyed. 200 sugar plantations would have also been destroyed during that period. Now, I'm going to show you how production declined. Before the revolution started when? The Haitian Revolution started in which year?
1781.
1781, you sure? Anyone else?
91.
1791.
Yes, 1791. And so we are looking now at this. This is 1789. This is before the revolution started, right? Before this revolution started, the amount of sugar that Haiti would have produced, or Saint-Domingue at the time, was 138 million tons of sugar. Coffee, 76 tons of coffee. Cotton, 6.8 millions of coffee. Indigo, what they used to make dye, 900,000. But by 1795, which is like 4 years after the revolution started, the production would have declined. Sugar from 138 to 1.6. Coffee from 76 mil to 2 mil. Cotton from 6.8 mil to 48,000. Indigo from 900,000 to 40. Production would have declined significantly. And my question now, why production would have declined significantly? Samuel.
Most of planters migrated to different Caribbean countries, sir.
Most would have migrated. Yes, that is one of part of the answer.
Sarah, plus the
Yes.
trade block. So like there was no one to sell the produce to, so it wouldn't even make sense making that much.
Yes,
And so the plantations were destroyed.
the plantations were destroyed. And if the plantations were destroyed, who refused to work?
The slaves.
Black people.
The slaves.
Yes, the enslaved people refused to work, so they have nobody to work. And so that's one of the main reasons why production would have declined. So we have now covered the success, why it was successful. And the reason why I'm giving you these ladies like this is because when I go through the past paper questions, this is how they ask the question for the past paper. All right? And so you need to drill, when you're studying the Haitian Revolution, you drill your answers like that. Now, someone from the group, positive effects of the Haitian Revolution. Which group had the positive effects? Ladies, which group had the effects? No one from that group is here? All right. Next group. Effects on the wider Caribbean.
Sir, Jillian said that her mic isn't working, so Jillian, I'll say it. So it affected trade. Yes. It caused people to migrate to various British Caribbean islands. It inspired slaves and the free colored to take action.
Yes.
Whereas the white planters then had to put in measures to ensure that they didn't rebel. In regards to it affecting trade again, that got rid of a major sugar and coffee producer, helping the rest of the countries to sell more of their goods.
All right. Any other point?
Oh, and in regards to it caused people to migrate to other islands, more immigrants, which then resulted in more assistance with jobs.
So you would have covered quite a lot of the points and very good points. So one of the first effects that we need to look at today, ladies, is the inspiration to enslave Africans in the other islands. As a result of Haiti being an independent country, being the first country in the first black country in the Western Hemisphere, it would have inspired other enslaved people to rebel against the system of slavery. And one of the first things was the Maroons in Jamaica. The Second Maroon War in Jamaica, 1795, is another example, and the Barbados Slave Revolt, 1816. Nanny Grigg was an enslaved woman, and she went about in Barbados telling people that, listen, if we need to fight for freedom, and if we fight for freedom, the Haitians are going to come to assist us. Effects, inspiration. Another point that you would have mentioned is the migration of whites. Not only whites, but colored also went to the other islands. They went to the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Jamaica, Cuba. Another point is the re-emergence of Roman Catholicism in the British Islands. Why Roman Catholicism was re-emerged? Why Roman Catholicism was re-emerged?
Sir.
Yes.
So being that Roman Catholic was the main denomination in Europe, so they still wanted to give them somewhat. They wanted to, just like what they did to the was it the indigenous people? They still want to do that to the here to the slaves.
But remember, we're talking about the re-emergence of Roman Catholicism in the British Islands. Why? Why is there a re-emergence of Roman Catholicism? Yes. Go ahead, Brianna.
Sir, because the British, they were Christians.
But what type
So
of Christian
hence,
denomination?
when they took over different islands, they taught the people that enslaved Christianity and the Roman Catholic. Like Roman Catholic was one of the main denominations. So I guess because most of the white persons migrated to different countries, they wanted to reestablish that, sir.
All right, but you are correct. But which denomination was very popular in the British Caribbean islands? Which form of Christianity?
Is it Anglican, sir?
The Anglican. So the main religion in the British Caribbean would have been the Anglican religion. And so if there's a re-emergence, is that the French, as Julian said in the chat, the French, they were largely Roman Catholic. So if they move to these other islands, hello? The French, if they move to the other islands, what is happening is that they're going to bring their Roman Catholics churches or established Roman Catholic churches in the other islands. So you're going to see a lot more Roman Catholic churches than before. For example, in Jamaica, For example, in Roman Catholic churches, we're establishing Above Rock, Cassava Peace, Matilda's Corner in Jamaica. These are some places where Roman Catholic churches would have been established. Other effects is that the British Islands and other islands gained from Haiti being destroyed economically. Guadeloupe and Martinique, they became very important trading partners with the US. Jamaica, same thing. The French planters who migrated to the other islands, they established coffee plantations in Jamaica, Trinidad, and Cuba. So these islands now start to produce a lot of coffee. We have also increased slave control, because what happened in Haiti, the whites are getting very fearful. They say, oh my goodness, if this should happen in the Caribbean, in our island, then guess what? This is going to be very bad for us. We don't want to be like Haiti. So what they're going to do is that they're going to increase slave control, tighten the restrictions on the enslaved people in the other islands. And they're also going to speak ill of Haiti. They don't want to be like Haiti. And even today, people speak ill of Haiti, speak of Haiti in a very negative way. That is something that the whites should have inculcated in us from the period of the Haitian Revolution. All right? Next group. Anyone from the group when it comes to the positive effects? I'm going to check the recording because I have the groups in the recordings. It is better, yes, sister, I've not done the work than to remain. Let me stop sharing. One second. So for the positive effects, the group C with the positive effects, you can continue.
The Haitian Revolution abolished slavery on the island. It was the first major successful slave revolt in the Atlantic world. The Haitian, oh, yes, sir, that was the only one that I remember.
All right. So for the positive effects, ladies, I'm going to go for the social, was that slavery was abolished. They have the Code Nord, which was, what was the Code Nord?
Sir, the Code Nord was the slave code for the French.
Repeat?
The Code Nord
It was the French slave laws.
The French slave laws. And so the French slave laws were no longer in place. And if the French slave laws were no longer in place, then Africans were no longer subordinate to whites. That was a very major accomplishment. Major accomplishment for the for Haiti. Slavery was abolished. Social positive effect. Political, Haiti received their independence. It was the first Black republic in the Western Hemisphere. They had a new flag, new constitution. New flag, new constitution. What was a constitution? A constitution is a body of laws that govern a country. Positive economic effects, increasing small land holding. They have control over their land. People no longer had to work on plantation. So these are some of the positive effects. Now, we would have looked thus far on the success reasons for the success of the Haitian Revolution, the positive and negative effects of the Haitian Revolution, effects on the wider Caribbean, and now we're going to look at some key leaders. So one of the group would have looked at Toussaint Louverture. The other persons who were very involved in the Haitian Revolution were his generals Henri Christophe and John Jacques Dessalines. Now, Henri Christophe, we know he was a military leader. He was born in Grenada. He supported Toussaint's leadership. He fought bloody battles, and he would have established his leadership over the north. While John Jacques Dessalines was also a military leader, he also supported Toussaint's leadership, fought bloody battles. He was the one after Toussaint Louverture. So Toussaint Louverture was captured and sent to France. After he left and went to France, Dessalines took over the leadership of the revolution, and he, Dessalines, was the one to declare Haiti independent. He was the one who declared independence of Haiti. He was the one who renamed Haiti renamed the colony Saint-Domingue, and he renamed the territory, the new territory Haiti, from the Haitian, sorry, not the Haitian, from the indigenous people name. What is the name Haiti? What it means? What is the indigenous word? We know the indigenous word is Haiti, which is for Haiti. But what is actually mean? Anyone?
Sir, what do you say?
What it means, indigenous. What is the indigenous word for Haiti?
Sir, it has something to do with gold.
No. Anyone? Haiti?
Sure, does it mean highland or high ground?
No. It actually means land of hills.
Oh, mountainous land. Oh.
So the indigenous word is Haiti, and it means land of hills. So he renamed the territory from Saint-Domingue and rename it to Haiti. The other thing that he did was that the Haitian flag used to fly over Haiti. He removed the color white from the flag, and that's why the Haitian flag today is blue and red. And he was the one who actually wrote the Constitution. So these are some of the effects of the Haitian Revolution. All right, are the roles of the key persons in Haiti. So ladies, we are through now with Haiti. Please read.
Sir, what's the next topic?
The next topic we're looking at the Maroons. We're going to look at the Maroons in Jamaica and the Bush Negroes in Suriname. Then after that, we're going to look at the other slave revolts. Now, my thing I'm asking you kindly, ladies, please, to reread your notes on the Haitian Revolution. Reread your notes. That book that I sent to you, please read it. Go through it. The PowerPoint presentation, not the PowerPoint, the questions that I'm sending you, the questions that are posted in the Google Classroom, please complete those questions and answer the questions like you're in an exam. But in order for you to answer those questions, you must be reading. So remember, no class on Thursday. All right? And before you go,